Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk about pie dough, specifically flaky pie dough. Because today we're going to make galettes, really beautiful, rustic, easy to make galettes. I'm going to fill it with rhubarb and strawberry, but first let's talk about the dough. So we want something super flaky, so you might ask, why are we not just using puff pastry? You can buy pretty good puff pastry, it's incredibly flaky, surely it's the right thing for this recipe. Let me explain why it's not quite the right option. Okay, so puff pastry is made up of these layers of butter, pastry, butter, pastry, butter, pastry. You roll out the dough and the butter is encased and you get these super thin layers of butter, and it repeats multiple times. And the science part is that as it bakes, those layers push open and the butter evaporates and creates steam, and it creates these really open layers. But the problem is these dough layers are so thin that they become fragile. And what can happen is when it's got a big fruit filling on top, A, the bottom of it won't be flaky, it'll be dense, but it will also absorb too much moisture and it can become gummy. So in my mind, it's best for just throwing on top of something like a pot pie where the moisture's not sitting on it, or it's good for things where you're assembling it after the fact. I don't think it makes the best pie crust, like a classic pie crust. But it does teach us one lesson. These shards of butter will really help. That's what we're looking for. But we don't want it as perfect, as flaky as puff pastry. We want something a little bit more rustic. So what we can do is take that idea and just make sure it's not completely repeating in even lines. We're gonna break it up a little bit. So there's a bit of dough, there's a flake, there's dough. It's much more uneven. And what that will mean is we still get beautiful flakiness, but it holds itself. It has a little bit more sturdiness. It's a little bit more rustic, for a better word, but it'll make a much better pie. And yes, this is a lobster pen that we bought in Hong Kong, and I love it. So before we can actually get started on making the pie dough, we need to take our butter. In this case, it's a whole packet of butter, 250 grams of butter. We need to dice it, and then we need to get it very, very cold. And this is the first really important lesson about pie dough, and generally most pastry, and that is you want to keep everything cold. And that's especially true with pie dough, because if everything is cold, you're more likely to get big chunks that will flake and will steam and will create that flakiness. If the butter's too warm, when you mix it into the dough, it will just completely get mixed in and you'll end up with something that's just much denser. It won't have that lightness. So we're just gonna cut it into cubes, and we're gonna throw it in the fridge for about 20 minutes or in the freezer for about 10, just to get it super cold. So whilst our butter is chilling, let's talk about other ingredients. So obviously we have plain flour, we have some caster sugar, and we have some salt. Now, these are really important, so do not leave them out. The sugar is gonna add a little bit of sweetness, which is obviously needed, but also it's gonna help to brown the crust. Sugar will caramelize as it bakes, so we need to have that in there for color and just for taste. The salt does something similar. It's gonna add flavor to the base of the dough, which again is super important. If you leave out salt, you'll have a pastry that just tastes of kind of nothing. It'll be really bland, so do not leave it out. All we're gonna do is mix that together, and then I'm gonna grab the butter. Okay, so once our butter is nice and cold, I'm gonna add about a quarter of it straight to the flour. Now this quarter, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna rub it in. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna add tenderness. So once our butter is nicely rubbed in, the flour is coated in fat, and that will add a nice level of tenderness. But obviously this is a flaky pie dough, so what we're gonna do now, add our chilled diced butter. And all we're gonna do is toss that around in the flour so it's coated, and then all we're gonna do is take these pieces of butter, and we're just gonna press them flat, just using your fingertips, again, because they're the coldest part. And this is what we're looking for. Nice kind of shards of butter. And like in the puff pastry, as they get rolled out later on, they'll create really thin pieces of butter and will create flakiness, but just the right kind of like pie dough flakiness that we are looking for. So just keep doing this. By pressing them, you will warm up the butter. So we are gonna do the next the most important thing, once again, we're gonna chill it again. So as soon as this is all done, as soon as all the pieces of butter are pressed, I'm gonna throw that back in the fridge for about 20 minutes. So once our butter and our flour mixture is cold, we can add our water, which is also very cold. But we also have a secret ingredient, and that ingredient is vodka. Okay, so let me explain a little bit. We don't want to develop too much gluten, and water equals gluten. So adding vodka, which is almost no water in it, even though it is a liquid, helps prevent gluten development. With our cold butter, we're using cold water because we don't want to increase the warmth too much. We don't want to make the butter soft. We want to keep it nice and solid. So what we're going to do is add our vodka to the water, and then all we're going to do is pour in our water, about a tablespoon or so at a time, and we're just going to stir, kind of lightly tossing it together, just to kind of create loose crumbs. We're not trying to knead it too much. We just want to bring everything together to moisten everything. Don't worry if the butter breaks down a little bit, that's going to happen. We're just trying to prevent it happening too much. And then once the water and our vodka mixture is in there, we can then get our hands involved. Just bring that dough together briefly. You don't want to do this for too long, again, because you don't want to chill. You don't want to warm up the butter. Okay, so you can see our dough is fairly uniform. It's sticking together. There's a few cracks, but it doesn't feel dry. And with just one or two kneads, it comes together. And there's just no dry pockets. It's a really good sign. I'm gonna throw this back in the freezer just because it's really warm in my apartment today, and we don't want this to warm up too much because we're gonna roll it, and we're gonna kind of do a cheats lamination to add in extra layering. Now I know lamination can be a scary word for people, but don't worry, this is a cheats lamination. It takes 2 minutes, but it really helps to make an extra flaky dough. It's well worth doing, so put that fear out of your mind. This is easy. Okay, so lamination normally means to roll out and encase with extra butter. So in this case, what you would do is you'd roll out the dough, you'd put butter on top, and then you'd fold it back up. This is a lot simpler. All we're gonna do is take a little bit of flour, just dust the work surface so the pastry doesn't stick. And what we're gonna do is roll it out into a rectangle that's roughly 15 by 45 centimeters, but again, the exact size doesn't matter too much. And we're just gonna roll it up like a sausage. So the idea for this rolling motion, this kind of fake lamination, comes from Portugal, and it comes from the bakers who make Portuguese custard tarts, pastéis de nata. They make their dough and then they roll it up once it's finished. They do it with like a kind of very soft fat, but for this we're just going to kind of borrow that idea, and it creates almost like little extra kind of micro flakes throughout the dough, and it just helps to create a flakier dough. But if we just take a look at this dough, you can see all these smears of butter, and what that's going to do is that's going to create a wonderfully flaky dough. So that is our rough rectangle. Now, like the bakers of Portugal, all we're going to do is roll this dough up just into a nice tight sausage, and then all I'm going to do is cut that into 2 pieces with a bench scraper, and you can see lots and lots of layering in there, and that comes from the butter and from our rolling. So just press that into a disc, and then we can refrigerate that until we need it. At this stage, we need to put the dough in the fridge for at least 4 hours, preferably overnight though. And I know this is going in the fridge a lot, but trust me, it helps. It really helps to hydrate the dough. It'll roll better, you'll get a better end result. So if you have the time, do it. But yeah, I know, we're using the fridge a lot. So for the filling for these galettes, I'm going to do a mixture of strawberry and rhubarb, which is such a brilliant combination. But normally in the UK, the best rhubarb and the best strawberries don't cross in terms of their season. But at the market the other day, I found some really great rhubarb and some early strawberries that were good enough to make this combo super delicious. We want something that's nice and flavorful. Bland strawberries are just going to make bland galettes. So try and use strawberries that are at their peak when the flavor is really nice and strong. So because the rhubarb you get in the supermarket was cut a while, we just want to cut these tough ends off. And if you're buying them fresh, obviously you'll also have, or from the farmer's market, you will also have the stalk end to get rid of, but again, my end's just a little bit dry, so I'm going to cut those off. And then we're going to cut these into just small slices. You don't want them too thick because they won't cook quick enough, because rhubarb can be a little bit tough, especially if it's on the thicker, older side. So just cut that into pieces. So for the strawberries, pinch off the green and then just slice the top. Quicker, easier, less fuss. So apart from the fruit, we need a couple of extra bits for our filling. So we need a sweetener, for which I am going to use classic caster sugar. And then we also need a thickener. And again, I'm staying classic, I'm going to use corn flour. Now, for the flavorings, we're going to add a couple of additional extras, one of which is normal, one of which is a little bit strange. So obviously we're going to use a little bit of vanilla. Vanilla is super classic, goes with all those fruits, but then I'm also going to add something a little bit more unusual. I'm going to add some almond extract. Now the reason for the almond extract is in the bottom of these galettes, I spread a thin layer of ground almonds, and that's mainly there to help absorb moisture, so we get nice crisp bases to the galettes. But it doesn't really add any flavour, because ground almonds don't have a ton of flavour. And I really like the almond element with the rhubarb, with the strawberry. So just a couple of drops, about 1/4 teaspoon of the almond extract, adds something delicious to the recipe. If you don't like the idea of that, leave it out, it's totally fine. Berries can release a lot of juice, and that means we'll get soggy bottoms to our pastries. We're not gonna get that beautiful crisp pastry. So I'm gonna do a 2-step process. And this might seem like a little bit of extra work, but it's really easy and you don't have to worry about it too much. So what I'm gonna do is gonna take my sugar, I'm gonna add that to my fruit mixture, and then I'm gonna let it sit for 30 minutes. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna do what's called macerating, and that just means drawing out the juices. And so after 30 minutes, you should see that the fruit is kind of swimming in liquid. And that's what would happen in the pie, in the galettes. So it would mean soggy pastry. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna strain off those juices and reduce them, which A, concentrates the flavor, making it even more delicious, and it reduces the water, meaning that we don't have a higher risk of making bad, soggy pastry. So when the liquid is reduced, we're just gonna take some of that, add that to our corn flour, and just whisk that to make a slurry. And the reason we do this is it prevents the corn flour from clumping when we add it to the liquid. And then scrape in our slurry, and then just mix that together. And to that we're gonna add a tiny bit of almond extract and our vanilla bean paste. And then just stir that together. For the dough, because we're not rolling it out like we want one big galette, I'm actually going to roll this out into a rectangle, and I want the rectangle to be roughly 6 inches wide, and that way we should get as many pieces as possible from one roll of the dough rather than having to re-roll the scraps multiple times. So my aim with this first roll is to get 3 discs of pastry. There we go. So, now that dough is nicely rolled out, I'm just going to cut out our discs. So, just use a paring knife to run around, and then we're going to take those discs of dough and we're going to place them onto a parchment lined sheet tray to chill in the fridge until they're firm again. So to assemble the tarts, all we're going to do is take a disc of our chilled pastry. We're going to add a spoonful of ground almonds, push that into a layer, and then we're going to top that with some of our fruit mixture. You don't want to pile this too high. You want this in a nice kind of fairly flat layer. And then we're going to form the galettes. So to do that, all we're going to do is lift up one edge and then fold over and just keep folding and turning as you go around like that. And then just carefully lift that up, transfer it to our baking tray, and we're going to pop that in the fridge until they're solid. Okay, so now that our galettes are nice and cold, all we need to do is brush them with some egg wash, sprinkle them liberally with demerara sugar or sanding sugar, then we're going to get them in the oven. So the galettes are going to go in the oven set to 200 degrees Celsius, and they're going to be in there for 10 minutes. You're going to reduce the temperature to 180 degrees and leave them in there for another 10 to 15 until the pastry is golden. If you find that the filling is darkening a bit too much, it might be catching, just tent it with a little bit of foil just to stop it from burning. So that is the finished galettes. They're super delicious, really nice, rustic, summery dessert that we can enjoy right now. And you can see that because we've put that layer of ground almonds on the base, the bottom of the pastry is super crisp, which is exactly what we want. Really nice, flaky pastry, soft, fruity filling. As always, the recipe is linked up in the corner of the video or down in the description box as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm making new baking videos every single week, and make sure you hit that notification bell to find out when my next recipes will be going live. Leave me a comment as well down in the comments to let me know what else you might want to see me make in an upcoming video.